Hello everyone. Welcome to Software Testing Expert Talk series. Today we have a guest who has over 15 years of experience in software development and testing in the IT industry so far. Plus, he is handling the role of Senior Software Quality Engineer at one of the most prestigious organizations across the world. During his career, he has always focused on implementing test automation strategies and designing the test automation foundation or infrastructure at various organizations. He is specialized in web, mobile, and API test automation. He has been a speaker at a variety of test automation conferences such as Selenium Conf, SauceConf, Romanian Testing Conference, Open Quality Conference, and many more. He is the creator of mobile testing pyramid and various open source projects such as ESLint UI testing plugin. He has experience in a lot of test automation tools. List of those automation tools are really long, so I could not call name of all the automation tools he has worked on. So I will not take more time in introducing our guest for today's STET session. Just want to let you know his name sounds like Kwo Ding. Yes, our guest is none other than Kwo Ding. Welcome to our show, Kwo Ding.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
All right. Today, Kwo Ding will talk about a plugin named as ESLint UI testing and will demonstrate us how ESLint UI testing plugin can help us in following best practices when writing UI tests. Let's learn directly from him. Over to you, Kwo Ding.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here. So welcome to my talk. I'm going to talk about how to check your tests without running them. So I'll dive into how to lint your test code as you would do application code. So first I'll go through what linting is and what it means for test code and how you could lint them by checking them based on good practices with my ESLint UI testing plugin. So first, some information about myself. Already, thanks for your introduction. But just to highlight a few things. So I have over 15 years of experience in software testing. I focus on implementing test and test automation strategies and design test architecture at different organizations. Specialize in automation web, mobile, and API testing. And yeah, I've spoken at several international conferences, such as Selenium Conf, SauceConf. I'm currently based in the Netherlands. Here's some contact information about myself. So if you have any questions related to software testing, yeah, don't hesitate to contact me. So let's start with what is testing. So, what is linting? Linting is the process of running a program that will analyze code for potential errors. So it's also known as static code analysis. And Wikipedia also has a nice description called a lint or a linter. It's a tool that analyzes source code to flag programming errors, bugs, stylistic errors, and suspicious constructs. So basically, it's a tool that checks source code without running it on undesired piece of code. And the term lint is actually, or linting, is derived from removing unwanted pieces of bits and fluffs of sheep wool. Don't ask me why, but that's where it's derived from.
Okay.
So yeah, so why do we lint? So these are statements actually. Yeah, I've worked with people who have said these kind of things, and that's fine. Like I have my own coding style, or yeah, just like semicolons at the end of a line of the endless discussion about the curly brace on the new line. It's not right or wrong. It's just different opinions, and as we all know, code is opinionated. And linting can help with this. So linting can help with better readability and expected layout of code. So there's a nice open source project called Popular Convention. There's the link below on this slide. And what it does is actually it scans all the GitHub projects, so open source projects, and looks for code conventions. And well, in this talk, I'm going to focus on JavaScript because I'm going to demo my ESLint plugin later on. So what this project does, the Popular Convention, scans all the projects and sees, okay, what are used conventions, and here there's one thing is the indentation. So in the upper example, you see that there are spaces inserted. So basically, if you hit the tab key on your keyboard, what character is then inserted in your code. So on the bottom example, you see it's actually a tab character, right? And on the top part, you see that there's like 2 spaces inserted. So this is a code convention. So let's see what is more used. So the spaces, so the spaces are inserted in the code is more used, and that's also what my experience is. Also in other languages, by the way. So let's look at another one, the no space and one space. So the function name and then followed by the parentheses. So the top one doesn't have a space, and the bottom one has 1 space. So let's see what is more used in open source projects. You see a 67% with a no space, still 32% using the 1 space convention. Well, I haven't really seen the 1 space in practice that much in my experience.
Okay.
That's good. So another one, the single quote, double quotes. Yeah, it's a well, I could say a popular discussion in JavaScript. So in my experience, the single quotes are more used. But double quotes, I also see it from now and then. So let's see here. So here you see a 56% usage of the single quote on the GitHub projects. So it's almost close to 50-50, which kind of surprised me because I usually see more the single quote usage in the JavaScript code. So yeah, if you're interested in other coding languages with examples like this, so check out that Popular Convention project. It really gives some nice overviews on what coding conventions are actually used in open source projects. So then we have also these great organizations, right, in our industry, like Airbnb, Google, and Standard.js right here. They created code styles. So basically, you could use these code styles to style your code, right? To check your code. So it's about layout, and what they have in common are that what they enforce is like tabs are 2 spaces, single quotes. They prefer const over var, and no trading spaces. And here are some differences between these code styles. Again, not right or wrong, right? Just different implementations. So, for example, here is the semicolons or training commas. The Standard.js doesn't require. These are not all differences, but these are the highlights. So what I usually see at organizations, they choose a code style here. For example, you choose the Airbnb code style, and then you can customize it for your organizations. For example, you could take the Airbnb code style, go through it, and you say, hey, I really like this code style. Let's use it for our organization or for our team. But I dislike the tabs, right? I don't like the 2 spaces. I like 4 spaces, for example. And then you can override that rule to have an indentation for 4 spaces. So and this can be done for JavaScript with ESLint, and that's really nice because it's very customizable, flexible, So you're not really bound to a very strict standard, but you can override some rules that's out there. So if you're not already relating your code, check out these code styles. It can really help structure your code automatically and not having endless discussions about, okay, we need that curly brace on the new line or something.
Mhm.
So like I said, what we learned, yeah, standardizations, right? I talk a lot about code conventions, but it's also for maintainability, readability, because if the code is structured in the same way every time, yeah, you don't get distracted by all this code. Let's say you open a code base you have never seen before, and the whole layout is all different as you are expecting or what you're used to. So you get maybe like, okay, let's structure the code first. So you get distracted, right? Instead of focusing on actual problems or issues you're trying to solve. It's a pre-code review because this linting can already help, well, not only structure the code, but also finding syntax errors or potential bugs. So potential code that may not even run or may not even work. And this is all without executing the code. So let's look at this graph. This is a very popular graph. So here, what it says is, so on the x-axis, you have the different phases. So if you find a bug in production code, the costs are much higher to solve that, right? But if you find a bug while you're typing or writing the code of the application, the cost is much lower. So this is why we lint, because it can find potential bugs very in the early stage. So if you already find it there, you don't even have to check it in and run it.
Okay.
So I'm going to talk more about testing, and especially UI testing. So what does linting mean for test code? So for UI testing, it can contribute to less flakiness, right? I'm talking a lot about in our industry about flaky tests. It can actually scan for locator issues, locate strategies, weighting strategies. You've seen a lot of talks, I think, in the industry about that. Later on I will demo the ESLint UI testing plugin, which can actually automatically detect this and try to help you creating more robust, for example, locators or weighting strategies. So maintainable tests, followed code conventions, like I said before. I think the most important thing here is the collaboration with other developers. So really talking the same language. So like I said before, so let's say you ask someone on your team, another developer, like, hey, I'm struggling with this issue. Can you help me out? And then this developer, I've never seen like the test code before, and open this up, and the layout is completely different as from the application code. So then he or she already distracted by the different layout. So you have a discussion about that first, instead of collaborating about some challenge or issues you're trying to solve. So I think this is why in my experience the most important thing. So for example, if you have application code linting rules already in place, why not apply it for test code as well? Because it's it's all code, and why not structure it in the same way? And in a modern software development, we have the continuous integration and continuous delivery, which requires rapid feedback. And for writing tests, linting is I think the earliest stage you can get feedback on for the test. So if you plot the same graph here, as we see in the previous slide for application code, so running tests is actually the production usually. So running tests in the pipeline. So I don't know if you've ever debugged a test that was failing on the pipeline only and not locally, or that feedback loop it's much longer to debug and to solve that problem, opposed to when you're writing the test in your editor. So before even pushing it to the code base. So how does linting actually work? So if you have your source code, which can be application code or test code, and what the tool does is actually it breaks down the code into an abstract syntax tree. So every statement, every line is broken down in a tree. Then you have the rule set. So that can be code conventions, right? But also very specific linting rules like, hey, test should contain insertion, no hard weights, stuff like this. And then it gives you the result. And this process is happening almost like instantly. So while you're typing, and I can demonstrate it by another nice open source project, which is this. Is the astexplorer.net. So this is a nice open source project, which I used a lot to develop the ESLint plugin. So basically here, here are some sample code, right? And if I click here on print tips with my mouse, you see here on the right side the abstract syntax tree. So you see here like a function declaration, an identifier, and then with the name print tips.
Cool.
Right.
Before we move forward, could you just make little this screen size a little bigger, like so that we can?
Oh, not even bigger, like this.
It would be great. It's great. It's great. Now it's good.
Okay. So yeah, saying I was clicking here on print tips, and on the right side you see the abstract syntax tree. So you see here identifier, function declaration. So everything has a name, right? And here another identifier of the member expression. And actually everything has a name, and you need it while you're writing if you want to write a linting rule. And this is how linting is based on and how it checks it. So let's look for an example here. So here I've on the bottom left here, I have an example of a custom linting rule, which I just created. So here you see like these names, like a call expression, and then an object name, an identifier. So it's something like this in the abstract syntax tree. So and then on the bottom right, it says it actually checks it. So it checks this source code with the abstract syntax tree and the linting rule, and then it shows the result here. So with my custom linting rule here on the bottom left, if I type here webinar start, well, that is a typo. So it says lint rule not fired yet. So if I say stop, then it says do not stop, which is actually this message, do not stop. So it's actually checking whatever in the source code on webinar.stop. And then the linting rule is fired. So this is a really nice tool on showing how it works, but also it's really helped me a lot when I was creating these linting rules by myself. So I can really like test it really quickly, seeing whether the linting rule is working or not. So let's go back to the presentation. So yeah, talk about ESLint. Yeah, I think it's the de facto standard for linting JavaScript or TypeScript code. So basically, finds problems, fix automatically, and you can customize it. And about customization, I will show you some examples later on how to customize like linting rules with ESLint in your code base. This is just a screenshot of the ESLint.org website. yeah, if you're not familiar with it, check it out. It's really a useful tool.
Okay.
So how did I come up with these ESLint UI testing plugin? Actually, a few years back, I started with the Sonar WebDriver plugin. I'm not sure if you guys know it, but I wrote a Sonar WebDriver plugin, which was checking code or linting code on so test code based on WebDriver, SLEM WebDriver in Java. Because back then I was working a lot with Java for the UI testing, but I think the last couple of years you see in our industry for UI testing, the more popular frameworks are JavaScript or TypeScript based, and I also work a lot on that. So yeah, back then I was working with WebDriver.io, and yeah, so I wanted to a tool that automatically helps me detecting like bad practices and help me yeah, improve test code in a more scalable way. But originally, when I started with the Sonar WebDriver plugin, I started with because it was born from saving time. Because some of the clients that asked me, "Hey, can you review this test code base?" And yeah, that's like a lot of like thousands lines of codes. And the first thing you look at is locator strategies, weighting strategies, so very basic things. And I thought, well, we can automate this, right? And that's how I dived into this whole linting tool. And so when I was working with WebDriver.io, I was thinking, hey, I can utilize ESLint for this, like I did with Sonar for Java code.
Okay.
So when I was writing this ESLint UI testing plugin with for WebDriver.io, I thought, hey, there are some rules here that I can generalize and also apply it for other frameworks or tools like Cypress, Playwright, Puppeteer, or Test Cafe. So I added that support as well. Yeah, I'll show you in the demo how that works. So how does it fit in a workflow? So while you're typing in your editor or your IDE, you get live feedback, just like we just saw in the ASTExplorer.net. You can run it from the command line, and because you can run it from the command line and getting feedback like a failure or a success, you can integrate it in your build process in your CI pipeline.
Okay.
So let's dive into the demo.
Yeah.
So let's me zoom in also here a bit more. So here's my GitHub page for the ESLint plugin UI testing. So basically it has a whole description on how to use it. So here, is this readable? Need to zoom in a bit more.
Yeah, you can just zoom a bit more.
Okay. Like this?
This is fine, perfect.
Okay, so I have here a WebDriver.io boilerplate project. So basically, I installed these ESLint plugin UI testing, just like here in the usage on how to install it. And you need ESLint installed. So in this project, ESLint is already configured. So I have an ESLint configuration file here. And the thing of what I have to do is enable the UI testing plugin here. And then I have to say plugin UI testing in a WebDriver.io because I'm working in WebDriver.io. So if you're working a different, using a different automation tool, you could say Cypress or whatever. But here I'm using the WebDriver.io implementation. So here already states which one you can use. And then I think it's activated. So let's see here. Yeah, so here is you already see an underline, and then here avoid browser page commands in test, rather move these to page objects or another abstraction layer. And then you have here a link. So if I click on this, we're going back here with documentation about this specific rule with incorrect and correct examples on how to use it. So what I'll do is down here, you see an overview of the rules. So I just want to go through all of these with some examples. So every time you see here recommended, it actually it's working for all of these frameworks. And where you have the specific frameworks, there's specific implementation. And I'll explain, like with this rule, why only these two tools are supported. So let's start with the missing insertion in test, which is crazy because I've seen this still in practice. Even recently, that there are actually tests being checked in without a specific assertion. So here in this project, expect from Chai, this is an assertion, right? So if I comment this out, it actually immediately says, hey, missing assertion test, right? Tests without assertions are not tests. So again, this list is also having a default setting with a log level. So that's why it was red underlined with the error here. But if you say, okay, I want to set it to warning, well, not sure why you would do that for a missing assertion. But if you would like to do that, you can override this. So no absolute URL. So let's say I have here a HTTP something.nl, because I'm based in Netherlands. Then it'll say, hey, avoid absolute URL, use space URL in the project config. So I just want to explain why it's only in Cypress or WebDrive.io, because WebDriver and Cypress, WebDrive.io and Cypress, they have a out of the box some kind of project config where you can set the base URL, right? Okay. But for the other libraries like Playwright or Puppeteer, those are more libraries and not really a framework. So they don't include like a base URL. And for Test Cafe, yeah, that tool has structured tests in a different way where this is not applicable. So that's why you see, like, for specific rules, which tools are applicable. So no assertions and hooks. So basically it's the same. So if I have a hook here, like a before each or something. So now I have a hook here. And I'll just copy an assertion, put here. Then it says avoid using assertion hooks, because in the assertion is part of the test and not based on any initializer or before each statement, or even like in a page object. So if you would like to fail on some check in the before each, just throw an exception or throw an error instead of using assertion, because insertions are specifically for tests.
Wow, I can see that it's helping us in helping us in correcting our mistakes, whatever we are doing.
Yeah. Yes, but I just want to note that yeah, these default settings are well, obviously opinionated. So with ESLint, you can override this, and yeah, let's do that. Let's see how that works. Yeah. So here you have a rules block, and I already prepared this one. So this is the UI testing no absolute URL. I think it's also here in the documentation on how to do it. So now I've turned it off, right? And the default was, let's check it out. What was the default? A warning, right? So see, now I only see the avoid page command, which is a different linting rule, because I turned this one off. But if I remove this, so it's back to the default, then it says, hey, avoid absolute URL. Right? So you can override it and saying, yeah, like I can even say, like, what was it? An error? It was a warning by default. I think if I put it to error, then it's even red underlined.
Yeah.
And errors will actually fail when you run it from the CLI. So this is very strict.
Right.
So no browser commands in the test. Yeah, so that was already this example. So browser commands like this, moved into some abstraction layer like page objects. So your tests are more concise and really telling you what it's actually functionally going through. And then the big thing, the locators, right? So let's say, so again, we're in WebDrive.io. So let's say we have this really bad locator. So I have a class 3, and then an element.click, right? So here it actually says avoid using a CSS selected tied to page layout. So what this means is like, well, what this linting rule does is actually looking for how many spaces or graded end signs are here in the CSS locator. But if you have like one, then this is still okay. But if you have like 2 or more, like this, then it seems like this locator is tied to the DOM tree, right? It's following a tree from your application. So that means that if the tree changes, this test will fail. And I know this because I'm not even running this test, right? It's checking this like, oh, it is a potentially not so robust locator. Wow. So what I'd rather do is a good practice is using like test attributes, like data test, I don't know, my button, inside your application, and also use it in these UI tests. So it's really tied to that element, and also when you're coding your application as a developer, you know that this is used by the UI test. So if I change it or remove it, then the UI test will fail, and again without even running it. So this is much better practice. It's not tied to a tree or in your DOM, and you know all the time which element we're talking about.
That's true.
Then we have some things like no disabled the focus test. So in this framework, this is a Mocha framework. So if I say .skip, just disable this test, right? It says avoid disabled tests. And well, of course, you might use this when you're debugging some other tests, and so you're skipping some other tests, but don't check this in, right? Yeah. If you check this in, then it runs on the pipeline and everything is green and you skip a lot of tests. Right. And I've seen this happening in practice. And if you have it only here, then you say only run this test in this suite. So let's say I've more tests here, right? Then with it would only run this top one. So again, if you check that one in, then only that test is running instead of the whole suite. So this is something, yeah, I would say it's quite nice to have in your workflow, so you don't check in these focus tests by accident. They have all the hard weights. So let's say you have a browser pause in this framework. In other automation is a different command, but basically it says avoid the hard wait, right? You could better let's look at documentation here. Like wait for display, to wait until some text happening, etc. So let's go here. And then you have some other selectors checks. These are specifically for WebDrive IO because they don't exist in the other tools. And no wait in the tests. So if you have to wait for an element to appear, yeah, try to extract that in your inside your page object or your abstraction layer you're using. And then the CSS locator example I just gave, the same implementation here is also for the XPath if you're using XPath. So actually checking the same thing if it's tied to a page layout. And here you see a better examples. And then you have the XPath selector check, which is a different lint rule because XPath selectors are just not recommended. So try to use CSS locators, and now just by default gives them a warning.
Right. So these are the basic rules which he can use. It's already available and implemented. And you have also shown us how we can create a separate rule. Okay, that's a great thing.
Yeah. I also want to show you a different example here. So I have a Cypress example project. So basically also with ESLint, and then I have here the ESLint plugin UI testing. So same thing. I have here the ESLint plugin. So here it's UI testing is enabled. And then here I'm extending from the Cypress one, right? And not the WebDrive IO. And just to show that it also works here. What shall we do? So here you see all these shoots, right? These are our assertions. So let's, if I remove these assertions, yeah, then it would say missing assertion in test.
Oh, wow.
Right. So it's also working for this. So I just dive into all these tools and see how it's actually used in practice. And here you already see like the avoid absolute URL. And now I also want to show you guys some other thing from ESLint, which is this not restricted syntax. So let's look at that. So in ESLint itself, you have this no restricted syntax rule already built in. So it's not related to my ESLint plugin, but just for ESLint. And this is really helpful if you want to implement or use a custom linting rule right away, right? Without creating a whole plugin and installing it. So here's the official documentation. So what I did here is actually remember the est-explorer.net example I gave? So I actually pasted this linting rule right here. And then with the custom message, so in this rules block, and that's it. So let's look on how that works. So again, if I let me move my cursor here. So if I say webinar, oh, not the webinar. that stop, then it would say please do not stop.
Okay.
So it's already immediately activated. So you can use this if in your team or organization you're touching some specific code, and you say, hey, yeah, but this is a good coding convention for us, and we want to check on this. So you can check it right away like this. And if you have like many rules to come up with, then obviously it's better to create a plugin to be able to share. But if you have like just a few custom rules, you can utilize ESLint to do this, just that. So checking it. So if it changes to start, there's no error. And this is underlined because the webinar is not defined, obviously. So that's really cool on the power of ESLint, and also like how you can customize rules.
Awesome.
So let's let's go back to here.
Mhm.
So key takeaways, yeah, enable linting for code conventions, right? And like I said, if you have linting rules already applied for your application,
Mhm.
apply it also for test code. Maybe not all rules are applicable for test code, so you can override it or disable them.
Mhm.
But in that way, you're at least yeah, talking the same language, so it really improves the collaboration with developers.
Mhm.
And linting can get early feedback on test code and checking on potential flaws.
Mhm.
If you're new to linting, start small. Linting tools are there to help you instead of working against you.
Mhm.
So if you're not used to linting and just enabled everything and everything is red, you see thousands of errors, then this tool is not really helping you, right?
Mhm.
So start small, like enable the linting rules that you understand,
Mhm.
and learn from there. Go for the expand from there, because otherwise it can be too overwhelming, or you have all these errors and you're going just to do ignore,
Mhm.
and then this tool is not even adding value for you. But these tools are and these linting rules are built to help you out, to make your life easier, not to make your life miserable. So yeah, try to understand the linting rules itself, and then apply the specific level of like error or warning to your code base. And use the custom linting rules like I showed you with the ESLint no restricted syntax rule for very specific code conventions. And if you're having many rules like that, you can extract it and put it in a separate ESLint plugin.
Mhm. Okay.
So that was it, actually. That was my last slide.
Oh,
Thank you
wow.
for your time.
Awesome. Great. I would say coding. That's throwing our light on how we can, utilize ESLint in our project and can refrain doing mistakes, I would say. Okay, so coming to questionnaire part. So I don't have many questions to you, but I have a couple of questions which I would like to ask, if that is fine.
Yep, sure.
Okay, okay. So as you have shown that we can use ESLint with Cypress and WebDriver IO. What other tools does it support apart from the mentioned one?
Yeah, so let's go back here. So the tools that it supports are listed here. So it's like apart from Cypress and WebDriver IO, I showed you in examples. You have
Mhm.
Playwright, Puppeteer, and Testcafe.
All right, got it. Coming to next question. If a person gets stuck in creating a rule for himself for his project, then
Mhm.
what would be the way like he can find a solution? Like how can he like try to debug or try to reach out? Like what are the ways we have?
Yeah, so the easiest way is actually using this AST Explorer,
Mhm.
because it will highlight specific errors you're doing, and
Mhm.
it will test the examples you're entering here right away.
Mhm.
So this would be the easiest way or the easiest tool to check it out. Also, you could also look at already implemented rules in GitHub for the source code and see how those rules are being set up.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's how yeah, what I went through while creating the plugin.
All right. Coming to next question, and it's related to skills of tester. So I would like to know, like, what skill does today's tester should carry with themselves?
Well, experience. So testing has evolved, I think, of
Yeah,
the
that's really
last many years, and I think what test the differentiating testers with developers, I think that difference is not that obvious anymore. If you're in the testing space, you're practically a developer because you're writing tests in code, and maybe creating utilities, libraries, which are very similar to writing applications. So in that sense, I think a good coding foundation would be great. Would be great to have in this space. But also apart from that, I see also many people working in the testing industry being more and more involved in the CI/CD pipelines, DevOps, so automation in general, and touching also different languages apart from just the application that is under test, but it's also touching other scripting languages just to be able to deploy your application efficiently and also test it in a proper way. So it's a very broad area, I would say.
Right. Okay. Coming to next question, Kwo Ding. So just want your words of wisdom for today's testers so that they can align themselves with the developers in the organization where they are working.
Sorry, I didn't get the question.
So question is, I would like to hear your words of wisdom for today's tester who could align themselves with the developers in the same organization, within the same team.
I like that. Yeah. So one of my opinion is that testing and like quality assurance of your code, but also not only code, but also deployments and everything around it, is the responsibility of the complete team, right? And if you have a role as specifically as a tester or a developer in test or something in that sense, your focus is to improve the quality in the whole software development lifecycle, and also get developers on board on how to improve the quality. And you might have the maybe most knowledge about tools we can use or how to do things efficiently. So yeah, it's a team effort, and you're there to I would say to really drive that, to drive the quality assurance.
Right. Got it. So that at the end, whoever is doing any kind of work, but customers should get the quality product. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah. Eventually, we're doing this all for the end user.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I said, it's a team effort, and there are many aspects in just, it's not about just having a really good, I don't know, locator strategy for UI testing, but it's much more than that. So also on how we deploy and how configuration is being handled on your environments. Yeah. So yeah, it's really broad.
That's really true. Okay. Thanks, Kwo Ding. Finally, we have reached to closure of this remarkable session on ESLint presented by you. Anything else you want to share before we wrap up this session?
No, nothing much. It was my pleasure. So I hope it helped you guys in having some insight about how to lint your test code. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. If anyone wants to reach out to you, then what are the ways for reaching out to you?
Oh, so I think I already shared the different contact details on the slides.
Okay.
So that would be the way to go.
Right. Got it. Thanks, Kwo Ding, for joining us over STET and sharing your knowledge based on your experience in your tenure in IT industry so far. Hope our audience would have learned a lot of things from your session, and we would be expecting more such deep dive sessions in upcoming days as well. We wish you All the best for upcoming projects on which you're working on, and thanks for being part of our STET journey.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you.